It's no secret that Call of Duty's newest season is obviously running into a lot of issues. And between the community itself calling out the issues and the game developers themselves denying the issues, we've put ourselves into an impasse. But the question is, generally, how does this come to happen? Well, generally, people like to assume that these developers just have a bunch of money and there's people that are extremely loyal to them that just keep playing no matter the issue. But realistically, the biggest issue with Call of Duty is it has no competition. Anything that's ever came out and quote-unquote a COD killer has never been successful, primarily because Call of Duty is so well established and it's almost a leap of faith for people to attempt to play other games because most of the time those games are plagued with very similar issues. So why are they going to play a game plagued with the same issues when they could play a game they already know that is going to have the same issues anyways? So we have extremely bad news today for the FPS community, and that is XDefiant is shutting down. Now this comes on the heels of not even a month beforehand where Mark Rubin comes out to say this: XDefiant has no plans of shutting down. And a month later, just a little over a month later, XDefiant is shutting down. So obviously this has been a long time coming because most of these development things never come around to happen in just 1 month that they've decided, oh yeah, I guess we're done. So it says, important message, XDefiant is sunsetting, and this is from the XDefiant Twitter itself. We also had the tweet from Mark Rubin today talking about how they are closing down shop as well. Anybody who had purchased the big Ultimate Founders Pack will receive a full refund, and anything within the last 30 days will be also refunded. Now, again, this comes on the heels of, obviously, Call of Duty doing terribly, but at what point do we have to question, is anything able to actually compete with Call of Duty? And the running statement is pretty much no, which is why Call of Duty continues to be able to release such buggy work and really doesn't see much of a loss for it. Because even Call of Duty on its worst day is better than a lot of some of these other games on their best days. And that is obviously being said with me obviously having my very real complaints about the game, and much of you all out there as well who have left comments on my videos very upset with the current stance of it. But even again, like I said, on the worst day, Call of Duty plays better than most. When the servers are working, Call of Duty feels like a fun game. When you aren't running into cheaters, Call of Duty is a fun game. When you start dealing with a military style yet arcade shooter, Call of Duty is still one of the best in the business to do it. And that goes for not only its multiplayer, but also for its battle royale. There's very few battle royales that even come close to offering what Call of Duty does. Obviously, Fortnite is probably one of the best in the thing, but not everybody's a third person and or cartoony style gameplay. But also on top of that, when you say cartoony style gameplay, they still do have this shark and a raccoon and a cel-shaded otaku girl or whatever. And then a vampire and a guy with horns. And so obviously Call of Duty has stepped away from what we would consider a true military style shooter, as it is very over the top. And there's a reason why they do this, is because all these skins sell. Let's be honest, most people want to see really cool stuff. And obviously the milsim players recently have been asking for them to have an option to turn off other people's skins so they can just live that milsim life. You know what? Honestly, I'd say go for it. Call of Duty doesn't want you to do that though, because they want you to see all the stuff they put a lot of money and time into, and they want you to buy it because it's obviously a game that is ran by money and they want your money. So obviously that's never going to happen. But with that being said, Call of Duty is still one of the top contenders on the market. And the biggest issue is that almost nothing can compete with it. Most games that have come out in attempts to compete with Call of Duty in the FPS market, most of them have failed either through hubris of believing that their game is going to be so good that they aren't required to do some of the community staples, or B, that they just don't know what they're doing. We don't know which ones are which, but one of the big things is, especially with games like XDefiant and Halo, both of them were brought up at the point when they were coming out. They're like, yeah, but will it have a BR? And that is simultaneously not just a meme, but also a little bit of a requirement, it seems, in today's market. It seems like a free-to-play add-on game mode that is generally something like a BR, something a higher risk mode, tends to be something that drives people to continue to come back and play. Even again, Call of Duty running in one of its worst versions of its BR mode is still one of the most played games on the market. Fortnite, which started off as Fortnite Save the World, which was a completely different game, its most successful mode is a free-to-play BR. And when you start looking at that, when Battlefield 5's biggest mode was Firestorm, a battle royale. So it seems like a lot of games are failing on this FPS arena market, and we recently even had that one game from Sony that came out, started with a C. It was so bad we don't even remember what it's called, but it came out and died instantly. Another arena shooter hoping to try to take a place of something similar to Overwatch. But most of all, what we've seen is the traditional FPS by arena style is very fatigued. And unless you're Call of Duty, a company that has established that for over 20 years, it's something that most likely will not succeed. And according to quite a few different people, and myself included, we're looking at a pretty much massive shift in the way that people are approaching FPS titles. It seems to be, originally it was arena shooters, and then battle royales came out and started taking over. And then as they've died off, we've seen more and more of these extraction shooters, something that Call of Duty came out with for DMZ. If you're a DMZ player out there, you can leave a comment down below and let me know if you're still playing it. But if you're not, one of the things to consider is that we're about to be entering an entire realm of which we see battle royale versus extraction shooters. And at this point, unless companies like Activision can turn around the idea of how battle royales work, you're about to start seeing most of the military style BRs probably convert over into closer to that of an extraction shooter, closer to something of a DMZ. We do have Delta Force coming out, which will be in one day by the time this video releases on December 5th, releasing a 32 versus 32 war mode, very similar to Battlefield, and then a 3-player squad-based extraction shooter, which is going to be very similar to a Tarkov, Arena Breakout, or DMZ. And honestly, at this point, Call of Duty itself has very little to compete with it in a modern shooter stance. So DMZ's extraction shooter version of itself is probably the closest thing that we could see Call of Duty pivot to when Infinity Ward comes in and takes over here, and not next year, but the year after, because apparently Sledgehammer is making the next installment, which will be a Black Ops 7 or something that features wall running. So I know a lot of you Milsim fans out there are probably ecstatic about that one. But we'll see, as that is all rumor and conjecture at this point. So one of the things to be looking forward to right now, if you are a fan of FPS titles, is learning to appreciate more than just Call of Duty. I know the Call of Duty community is very stuck on its ways of liking to play its Call of Duty titles, and that's of no problem for me, because keep in mind, I understand completely. If something works for you, why are you going to go out of your way to completely change what you're playing if you enjoy the style of gameplay? Well, here's one reason, and I think it needs to be probably the most important part right now, is if you want to see Call of Duty fix these issues, they need to have competition. And right now, Call of Duty is uncontested in the traditional FPS market, not only for the style of arena gameplay that they offer, because no one else can offer it, but also in the semi-realistic arcade military-inspired shooters. There is very little that competes against it. The closest you could say that competes against it would be a PUBG, which is obviously significantly larger in like the Asiatic regions. When it comes to North America and Europe, a lot of them tend to lean a little bit more towards Call of Duty. So if you want to see Call of Duty actually improve, the best thing that could happen would be Call of Duty getting a little bit of competition. Now, obviously, if you are still a massive Call of Duty fan and you've been enjoying your time, that is awesome. I love to hear it. If you're still struggling through it and you need some tips, I have a couple of videos over here that should help you get a leg up on your competition.